After finishing my degree, university degree, I really didn't feel like working immediately. I thought I want to see if there's other purpose in life, and there was a little bit of spiritual interest that was aroused at college mainly because of that time, the late 60s. People were very much interested in Asia, in yoga, not so much yoga, but Eastern philosophy, if you want to call it that. So we were a bit exposed to that. So I was a bit interested. So after finishing my course, my first contact with Srila Prabhupada was, like many of us, was through his books. It wasn't so much through, personal contact even. I never really knew of the existence of the Hare Krishna movement at all, what to speak of Srila Prabhupada. So I was just literally visiting, hanging out with some of my ex-college mates. We were all into intoxication, LSD and this and that. I'd already vowed, I had an interesting experience which convinced me not to take any more intoxication of any kind, actually. And I was still, hanging out with my friends from those days. So then I was staying with them, and they were, you could say, a little intoxicated on that, whatever they were taking. I wasn't indulging, so I was just looking for something to occupy my time. And they had a large selection of literatures in their apartment in England, and I just was looking for the books and magazines, and nothing really interested me very much. I wasn't particularly interested at that time in going to a career or anything at that time, and I was just looking for something. So right at the bottom of the pile of literature, I found, well, that's my first contact, I found 2 magazines, Back to Godhead magazines. There weren't so many books in those days in '71, at least not in England. Magazines were the main thing I heard they were distributing. So that was my first contact. I read the magazines throughout the night, back and forth. It just triggered off an immediate attraction, started chanting Hare Krishna straight away. We'd heard the Maha Mantra before in various ways, but I never connected it. So then that made everything clear. It wasn't just Srila Prabhupada's articles, everyone's articles. There were so many devotees, Janananda and Satsvarup, and different devotees were writing articles in those magazines, and it was really convincing for me. He just put together everything that was sort of like come in contact with. It made sense. It put everything in order. It made everything, directional. Everything before was not really a clear direction, spiritually speaking. It was so clear. And Prabhupada made everything very clear. Made obvious what the goal is and how to achieve that goal. So I was convinced just by reading, I was literally convinced just by reading those 2 magazines. Yeah, Prabhupada was really amazing in this sense because we had no neck beads, we had no kurtas, nothing like that. We just had one dhoti. We only had one dhoti each. We didn't have more than that. It wasn't really a dhoti, just a piece of nylon cloth. T-shirt. No one had. I don't know if anyone had. I certainly didn't have Tulsi beads. Practically nobody did. Whatever beads you're already chanting on, those were the beads Prabhupada chanted on. I don't know of. Maybe some did, but most of the devotees I knew did not have new sets of beads. Prabhupada wasn't like fussy about these things. It's not the externals, it's the internals. It's receiving the pure holy name from a pure devotee in parampara. So he whatever beads we gave, and the temple president, Dhananjaya Prabhupada, had given these beads to Prabhupada or Prajamna, somebody had given them, and Prabhupada was to chant all these beads. So, and when we were sat down there for initiation, and the names were called out, and then we went up to get our beads in little groups of 3, and Prabhupada looked at us, and he saw we had no neck beads. He said, "Where are the neck beads?" He'd already given a lecture. He said, "Where are the neck beads?" We had no neck beads. We didn't have neck beads. So Mr. Prabhupada said, "You have to have neck beads." So somebody brought neck beads. We went and sat down again, and somebody put neck beads on us all, So we sat down, and names were called out again. This time they were called out in different orders. He had like this lucky dip. In English we have a lucky dip bag. Prajamna had this bag, and we just pull the beads out of the bag. And this time my name wasn't called out at all. Everybody's name was called out. My name was not called at all. I don't know what was going on. I was convinced what was going on, but I didn't really know. convinced I told him what had happened. And then it was finished, and the yagya began. My name wasn't called out. I had no name, no beads. The yagya went on, and I didn't know what to do, I was supposed to throw the grains in, or what I was supposed to do, I didn't know. Prabhupada was still sitting there on the Vyasa stand. And the yagya was finished. Prajna finished the yagya. And I was still sat there like completely lost. I thought, God, there's a lesson here. You can't cheat Krishna or his pure devotee. You can't cheat them. I really thought that, the truth is the truth. You can't, It's like we hear stories now. We didn't know there's stories then of people disguising themselves, like Rahu disguising himself as a demigod or something and trying to get the nectar. I felt like that, I felt like, I was a complete, demon or something, and I really wasn't eligible. So that's it. It's proof that I'm just not eligible to get this, connection, the pure devotee of the Lord. It certainly made me think like that anyway. But after the yagya was finished, Dhananjaya Prabhu came up to me and said, "What's your name?" And I said, I don't have one. I'm still the same name. And he said, "Well, that's..." And he went running over to see Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was just about to get into his car to go back to Bury Place. The program was carrying on, but Prabhupada was leaving. And so, I don't know what they said, but he talked to Pradyumna, and Pradyumna talked to Srila Prabhupada, and then he said something back to Dhananjaya, and Dhananjaya came back to me and said, "Prabhupada said you have to go back to the temple straight away." I saw what happened is that Pradyumna put his hand in his bag and realized there was one more set of beads. I saw him pick it out of the bag. So he was a bit surprised. And then he told me I had to go back to the temple, so I had to run back to Bury Place straight away. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I was thinking Srila Prabhupada might tell me now, "Please go away. We don't need people like you in the movement." I didn't know what he was going to say. I was so, feeling like, unqualified and, like that. So I went back and I waited. There was hardly anyone in the temple. The Pujari, maybe one other devotee, practically nobody. Everyone was on the square. And Pradyumna was there, of course, with Prabhupada. And maybe Nanda Kumar was cooking. I don't know what he was doing. But only Pradyumna was there in Prabhupada's room with Prabhupada. He told me to wait outside. I was like waiting outside, and I was kind of pretty nervous. I didn't know what was. It was almost. I felt like I was going into the dentist clinic or something. I was quite nervous. And then Pradyumna came out and he said, "Okay, you can go in now." Now Pradyumna was one devotee I could always relate with. I had I don't know, he made you feel very comfortable. He was amazing. I had a kind of a loving relationship with him in a sense. So, yeah, I felt always comfortable with Pradyumna. He said, "Now," I thought he was going to come in with me, but he said, "Go in now." I said, "You come in?" He said, No, on your own." I was like, oh my God. So I went in. And Srila Prabhupada was sitting behind he had a glass desk. He was sitting behind the desk and on the floor. He was generally, I can't say I ever saw Prabhupada sit at a table. Obviously he sat in chairs sometimes, but I never saw. Always sitting on the floor, on the cushion. One thing about Srila Prabhupada, he was always, even other people were sitting up. It was not, he would always sit on like that, So we would too, of course. Sometimes still do. And Prabhupada sat there and I went in. I didn't know what to say. Prabhupada looked at me and I was kind of, I guess he could see I was really nervous or something, because that was my nature. And anyway, he looked at me. I paid my obeisances and I sat there in front of Srila Prabhupada. And he looked at me and he asked me usual things, what are the regulated principles. It all came about. It was very quick. I know what I was going to say. I didn't say anything personal, so beyond that, I was expecting the worst. But he asked me what the regulated principle was if I was chanting 16 rounds. So I answered that. Somehow or another I managed to answer it. And then he picked up the very same beads. And the beads were not even made of wood. Some of them were made of dough, flour and water. We had no wooden, some of us had no wooden beads even. Some of them were wood, some of them were made of dough. I put them in the oven and cooked the beads in the oven to make the dough hard. And I was chanting, no knots between, just strung around a string. Nothing like, very simple. And Prabhupada chanted on those beads. And then he gave me the beads. He told me my name, told me what it meant, paid my obeisances. He said, offer your obeisance. This is one lesson which I had 3 times from Prabhupada. offering obeisances. There's more to offering obeisances than just mechanics. It's from the heart. But the externals, probably because I'm external, I'm not a mature devotee in that sense. But Prabhupada was very, even externally, he gave me these lessons 3 times. 1, 2, 3. This is the first. And he said, offer your obeisances properly. So, because he gave me the beads. He said, I had the beads in the right hand, and one hand on the floor, and one hand holding the beads. So put both hands on the floor. Put the beads back on. I put the beads on the table. Offer my obeisance with both hands. And then I sat up, and I was about to go, and he said it. And then he opened his tiffin. And this time he had Simply Wonderfuls in the tiffin. So he had a Simply Wonderful. A very famous sweet from those days. And Prabhupada pulled out a Simply Wonderful and gave me a Simply Wonderful. So I was quite, because I love Simply Wonderful, so I did that anyway. And again, I went to offer my obeisance. This time I had the Simply Wonderful in my hand, and one hand. Prabhupada said the same thing again. Offer your obeisance with both hands flat on the floor. So I did it again. It's like, when am I ever going to learn? I still don't do it. And so then I did that, and then I picked up the beads, and I picked up the Simply Wonderful, and this time I left. He told me the name, meaning, and everything. And then I left and went outside the room. It was all quite quick. So that was my only very close interaction. But a couple of days later, after initiation, it may have been 1 or 2 even, I can't remember, but very soon after that, they asked me to cook. As in those days, you didn't have to be Brahmin necessarily to cook for Radha Krishna. At least, if there wasn't anyone, it was like that. We even had, in that 72, there were 2 uninitiated girls. They were Indian girls from Kenya. They were cooking. Sometimes they were cooking for Radha Londonishwar. They weren't even initiated. Prabhupada even encouraged them to do it. I heard that Prabhupada encouraged. It wasn't so, there weren't so many Brahmins, I suppose, in those days anyway. And anyway, they asked me to cook, so I cooked the breakfast. I'd never cooked before. And for the day, I had very little idea. But then I brought the plate upstairs. We had to take the plate up. Prabhupada was giving lecture in Bury Place. We did Bhagavatam class in the morning. And there was no separate door to the deity room. We had to go through the temple room, to the curtain, offer it. So I went in and gave it to the Pujari. Prabhupada was giving lecture. He must have looked at me because I was offered. I was like looking for a place to offer my obeisances before going back to the kitchen. The temple was crowded. It was full of devotees listening to class. So then I found a space, to offer my obeisances, but it was at an angle with my feet slightly towards the deities. Prabhupada was sat right next to the deities. As you look at the deities, he was on the right side. His vyasam was right next to the altar. It was a small temple, very small temple room. So, it covered a fair bit of the front of the temple, actually. And I just managed to get enough space to offer obeisances, but I had my back more or less to the deity. I didn't really see much choice. At least I didn't think I did. So then I went back to the kitchen, and after the class was over, Nanda Kumar came down and said, Srila Prabhupada told me to offer your obeisances properly. Never offer your obeisances with your feet to the deity, he said. He probably said, tell that boy to offer his obeisances properly, I'd imagine, something like that. So this is the second time I got another lesson in obeisances. Well, I finished the obeisances off. But we never finish offering obeisances. Our life is based upon that. That's what I learned. That the essence of Krishna consciousness is to constantly be offering your obeisances to the spiritual master. Constantly. In everything we do. That was the lesson I learned from this. Maybe the next year, in the manor, when Prabhupada came, he was staying, maybe he didn't, I don't know, 74, 75, something like that. I was staying at the manor by then. My service was at the manor. And this time I was in the temple room. It was the middle of the afternoon. It was 4:15 in the afternoon. This I don't remember quite clearly, even the times. It was about middle of the afternoon, 4:15. I had a service, which I was in a position of responsibility, so I could kind of like do my service in my own time, in a sense. And I would do a lot of reading and chanting. So I was in the temple room quite often in the afternoon, just reading and chanting. So I was chanting, sitting there against the wall, looking at the deities, chanting on my beads. It's about 4:15 in the afternoon. No one else. There's only one other person in the temple. Her name was Vitasya. I can't remember her name now. She was a model. She was a guest coming to the temple at the manor. She's quite famous. I think she may have passed away now, I think. But she was quite well known. She was a model in London. You know, say regal-looking lady. And she was coming regularly. She was chanting also. But she wasn't initiated at that time. She wasn't full-time. But she was in the temple. Suddenly the door opened at the back and Prabhupada walked in. He walked into the back of the temple. It was very unusual, 4:15 in the afternoon. I mean, I was there most days. The only time I saw Prabhupada walk in at that time. He decided apparently to go on an afternoon walk. He wanted to go for a walk for some reason. And even his servant wasn't with him. The only person with him was a devotee named Narendra, who was an English devotee, who happened to be sitting outside Prabhupada's room. And so he had picked up Srila Prabhupada's shoes, because Prabhupada presumably had told him we were going for a walk or something. So he picked up Prabhupada's shoes and was walking behind Prabhupada with the shoes in his hand. And Prabhupada, maybe I'm speculating, but Prabhupada walked straight down the stairs in the manor, and instead of going for a walk out, he went into the temple room. So Narendra came behind him with his shoes. Perhaps he didn't realize it, I don't know, but he just walked in behind him, carrying the shoes into the temple room. And so there's about 3 lessons to learn here. So then Prabhupada walked into the temple, and he immediately, when I saw Prabhupada, immediately offered my obeisances, and I remembered how to offer my obeisances. So I put both hands on the floor, and I didn't have my back to the deities, nor towards Prabhupada. I did it sideways, like that in between. So he said nothing to me, but the guest, this Vitasya, she must have been quite shocked also, because wasn't expected. She offered her obeisances too, because she was literally a devotee, but she wasn't fully, aware of everything. But she paid her obeisances with her feet towards the deities, because Prabhupada was coming in at the back and the deities are at the other end, so she took with her head towards Prabhupada, her feet towards the deities. So Prabhupada looked, he saw, and then he said nothing to her. But he did. He went up towards the altar, and he said, "Where is the pujari? Where is the pujari?" And the pujari was there. It was a lady. I can't say I absolutely remember which one, but it was a lady. And a lady came out, one of the Matajis came out. They were washing, after the arti, after the bhoga offering, they were washing the dishes to the right side of the altar. We have a little paraphernalia room there. So they came out, and Prabhupada said, "You are the pujari?" "Yes, Srila Prabhupada." And Prabhupada said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Washing the dishes, Srila Prabhupada." No. What are you doing? They didn't know what to say. What am I standing here? What are you supposed to say? I can imagine what they were thinking. What does Prabhupada want me to say? And Prabhupada said, "You are the pujari." He said, "There is a guest in the temple, and you are not teaching them how to offer their obeisances properly." He said, "It is the pujari's responsibility to show the guest how to worship Krishna properly." That means to offer obeisance properly in front of the deity. And then Prabhupada, by this time a few other devotees had come in. A little boy named Shivadwar. Shivadwar, the son of Swati. Swati is a wonderful devotee from America. I'm sure she's been interviewed. And her son, little boy, he was very small, Prabhupada used to play with him a lot. There's many pictures of Prabhupada playing with him in a manner. He came in, and then Prabhupada said, "You offer your obeisances like this." Maybe there was only 3 or 4 others, she and his son, or maybe one other in the temple, as well as us 2 or 3. And Prabhupada then went down and offered the obeisance. He said, "You offer your obeisances never with your head or your feet towards the deity or towards the spiritual master." Of course, in some temples, like here, Prabhupada arranged his Vyasasana in such a way that you kind of do have your feet towards it. But the manner of the Vyasasana's at the back. So he made it clear there, at least. That's how you do it. And he said, though there was no one there to record, but he said, either your left side or your right side, but never with your feet or your head. And he paid his obeisance. And Shivadwar, this little boy, came out right next to Prabhupada and just imitated him exactly. Hands out straight, dandavats, and said, "What is your problem? Even a child can do it properly. Why you can't do it properly?" He said. He didn't talk to Riteshya at all. He was just talking to, I took it to me also, but especially to the Pujari. He taught that lesson. Then Prabhupada got up and he turned around. We were all kind of like, because Prabhupada was in a little bit of a teaching mood, like instructing mood. And Narendra was behind holding the shoes. And Prabhupada said, "What is this? Are you holding the shoes right in front of the deities?" Prabhupada said, "Never bring those in the temple room." And Narendra flustered, he had a chudder. So he quickly wrapped the chudder around the nonsense, he said. Prabhupada said something like, "This is another nonsense." So, and then he walked out, and Narendra went behind, and that was that. He taught those lessons. We always be ready. It's the same thing. Any moment, the spiritual, we have to be ready at any moment. Not though, "Oh, the spiritual master is only coming in a month's time. I don't need to worry. Let the house be dirty. Let this be this. Let that be that." We're tidied up when he comes, right? But we've got to be ready at every moment. That's what Prabhupada's teaching us. He's teaching us that Krishna's with us always. And the spiritual master reminds us of that. So, that's one lesson. Secondly, practical lesson. Don't bring shoes into the temple room. Even they were Prabhupada's shoes. They were outdoor shoes. He said, don't bring them in. And then offer your obeisances properly. Krishna's looking, we're often, it's not just mechanics. We've got to be conscious of what we're doing. Conscious. Even though we see, it's such a big thing, it's almost beyond retreat. Devotees here, they offer their obeisances to people with their backs towards Prabhupada in the samadhi, sometimes here and there. It's very unfortunate. They need to be taught how to offer their obeisances, not to have their feet towards Prabhupada in the samadhi or anywhere. I know it's difficult. Tulsi's over there, Prabhupada's over there, the datas are over. But as much as possible, we have to do it. This is conscious. This is being conscious. So Prabhupada always told us to be very conscious. I was the treasurer of the manor, so Prabhupada, sometimes I would get messages. One time he called me into his room on some, financial things, but it wasn't a lesson so much, it was a request to do things. But we get messages, we had to be very, very careful not to waste anything. We had no money. Every light, Prabhupada would check lights. In the manor, he'd go around, he'd check sometimes to see that the light was turned off as there was no one in the room, or a heater, or whatever it was. He was very particular not to waste a single thing, because everything belongs to Krishna. Nothing should be wasted, absolutely nothing. 1976, I was in Prabhupada, when Prabhupada came in 76. I was the cook, I was the head cook at the manor for a while. And sometimes we weren't direct, I wasn't never directly cooked for Prabhupada, but sometimes the preparations would go for Prabhupada. And I remember chapatis particularly, that was a real experience. Cooking chapatis, because we had there's 200 devotees visiting, in the manor. So we had to cook 600 chapatis every lunchtime. It's quite we didn't have much choice. There's one really wonderful lady, I can't remember her name, devotee, disciple of Prabhupada, from Gujarat. She was really expert. So she was our main chapati cook. We had this big plate. She could cook 16 chapatis at once. Really expert. So she would cook the chapatis, and sometimes some of those have to get involved. I remember every chapati, because Harikesh that year was with Prabhupada, he would come down to get the prasadam, to the kitchen. We didn't have a separate deity kitchen in those days. It was one kitchen only. So everything was cooked there. So he would come down to get the prasad, and take up to Prabhupada in his room, lunchtime. So the chapatis were a big thing, because maybe Prabhupada chastised him or what, I don't know. But the chapatis had to be just perfect. Round. First cooked, they had to puff up fully like a balloon almost. And little black dots evenly spread all over, not burned but there has to be these little pock marks all over it, just perfect. He said, "What's wrong with you? You can't get these chapatis right there." Prabhupada's not happy. So then he started trying. He couldn't get it right. No, he just wouldn't work. But it was another lesson. Everything should be done nicely for Srila Prabhupada, perfectly cooked, and very nice. Prabhupada just teaching us, because it's for Krishna, we should do things nicely, and not just, who cares. But he's teaching us how to do things for the pleasure of Krishna, the pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. That's what it's always teaching us. How we can become eligible, basically speaking. Because unless we're pleasing Krishna, we're not eligible. I was cooking the milk sweets for the deities late at night. There was one other devotee, and they were washing the pots, and I was cooking the milk sweets. And Prabhupada hadn't been eating much for a few days. I think he was all sick. And then suddenly Harikesh ran into the kitchen. He said, Prabhupada wants to eat right now. Like 10 o'clock at night. Very unusual. Something like that. He said he wants khichdi. Khichdi. I mean, he said he wants it before, I think he gave 30 minutes. It must be ready by such and such a time. We put everything down and all together, three of us, really try to get it together to get that khichdi ready for Prabhupada. Rushing. And it was like 2 minutes late. Harikesh ran up the stairs. And then about 5 minutes later he came down. And he said, I'm finished. He didn't say nothing, he just said, I'm finished. Prabhupada said you were too late. It's too late. He wanted it by 10:30, it was like maybe 5 minutes late. He said, take it. You're teaching many lessons, always be on time. Prabhupada was, generally speaking, very like that, always on time. And we weren't trained like that, we weren't so much, because he was teaching that, don't be late, everything should be on time. I don't think it was so much about Harikesh being finished, or that it was khichdi. It was a lesson in being on time, always like that. But one thing I really felt about Srila Prabhupada is that he taught very much so to live in the present, not to live in the past. We can very often rely on the past or dream of the future. But he taught us to live in the present and do the needful according to time, place and circumstance. What may be applicable in one place may not always be, applicable in another place. He taught this, not just being dexterous, but also being, open like that, to see what works, and not just stick only to one, this is it, type of thing. The goal is the same, the philosophy is the same, but I saw that he taught the method of presenting the philosophy has to work. Otherwise, what's the use if it doesn't work? So to present the same message, it's like packaging an item for the market. You've got to know how to package it in such a way that the people will take the medicine. Otherwise, what's the use? You've got the medicine, the people aren't going to take it. What's this? So I felt Prabhupada also taught that. And it's very difficult in this materialistic world in Kali Yuga, no doubt. But Prabhupada was able to do that. And he told us to do so also. How to present the same message in the present time, place and circumstance. So I think that's a practical lesson, a very important. It's not so much an emotional lesson or a quality lesson, but a practical lesson for the spreading of Krishna consciousness. And that's really the essence of his coming to the West. It's not just to, go there, it's to present and preach Krishna consciousness and present it in a way that people will take it. So in that same mood, others may not agree, but we should also have that same willingness to be guided like that, to present Krishna consciousness in a way which is effective, without compromising the actual principles, without compromising the philosophy and so on like that, or the objective goals. Srila Prabhupada, as we all know, was in health condition, was very poorly, extremely. And then in August 77, he decided to come to London. He had other plans, not just London, but at least he came to London. Tamal Krishna Maharaj was there. I think Upendra, I can't remember. I think Upendra came to Prabhupada. One or two others. They came, and we didn't have much notice, maybe 2 or 3 days notice of Prabhupada's coming in 77. We were on a constant marathon. And this is another major thing. It was wonderful because in a few weeks, 10 days' time, the Prabhupada book marathon starts. So then in 77, from about, I guess it's April when Prabhupada's health, March, April, when Prabhupada's health started to noticeably deteriorate, we started a non-stop book marathon. It was understood that book distribution was the most pleasing. Everything's pleasing, services, but we had this thought anyway, that book distribution will please Prabhupada, will keep him with us through book distribution. This is how we felt Prabhupada's presence. So we felt his presence in dedicating our lives to distribute books. So that time I was the Sankirtan coordinator, kind of leader of the Sankirtan in the UK. It was very we were on such a non-stop book distribution marathon, whatever way we were doing records as well, but primarily books. All over the world, mostly the Western world in those days. India was not very developed in those days, not like now. And in Australia, in America, in Europe particularly, maybe a few other places, devotees were going out full-on book distribution. They were like a competitive, Prabhupada created this kind of exciting, competitive spirit amongst us to distribute more books. So we were going flat out there. It was really, almost day to day, it was like, what's the score of this and that from France and Germany and the West Coast and the East Coast and here in Australia. We were like trying to do more than everybody else for Prabhupada, We thought this would please Prabhupada. The whole essence is we may feel it's to please Prabhupada, but Prabhupada is just bringing this out, what pleases Krishna. So that's what pleases Krishna, see his message spread. So we were doing like that. Then we had almost every available person in both the manor and in Bury Place. We're still in Bury Place then. Everyone on Sankirtan, literally men and women. We had women's traveling parties, men's traveling parties, going anywhere we could. I won't mention some of the places we were going because, they were other GBC zones, wherever we could go to distribute books. And then maybe 2 days before, we got a message that Srila Prabhupada is coming. And we've been, honestly speaking, have been paying less attention to other areas of devotional service, mostly concentrating on book distribution. Daily worship was going on as normal, but the cows, the gardens, and cleanliness, many things that were not as they should be. So we really knew, we knew from every year he came, that Srila Prabhupada would look at whatever needed to be looked at. He had this unique knack of going exactly where the problem was. You clean everything, but there's one area which wasn't done. Srila Prabhupada, it's like he didn't see the areas that were good. He would go straight to the area that was untidy or where the garbage was or something. Why is this like this? He had this kind of, because he was guided by the Super Soul, no doubt. He would do that. So we knew that. So we weren't many devotees at the manor for the first day or so because we had to call them all back from Sankirtan. So there's just a handful of us there trying to clean the whole place. The lake, we have a lake at the manor, was dirty. There was all kinds of stuff in the lake. And we knew that Prabhupada, we were still thinking Prabhupada's going to go on his morning walk. He's going to be giving class every day. He's going to go around and inspect the place. We weren't thinking that he was like basically, whatever you want to call it. His body was basically invalid. We weren't thinking like, and that's how we should always think. We shouldn't think, he's not going to look at it anyway. Krishna sees everything. The Prabhupada was teaching us that everything should be done properly for Krishna's pleasure. So we were desperately trying to get that place. There were fallen leaves everywhere and branches, and the rubbish hadn't been cleared away properly, and there's stuff in the lake, and we were going everywhere, and it started to rain. For 2 days it practically rained non-stop. We were out there in the rain, in the lake. I remember back to Chaitanya Maharaj. I don't know if you've interviewed him. You have to find years, but my memory is he was practically up to his neck in the lake trying to get things out, and it was raining, and we were getting cold, and, it was real yuck. And then the devotees come in. We tried to get it as clear as we could, and then we had to bring Prabhupada from the airport. We didn't really know exactly what condition he was in, and there was some event going on in London, some official event. We couldn't get a car for the life of us of a decent nature. There were no Rolls, no Daimlers, nothing was available. Nothing. We couldn't get any decent car. Eventually, because I was involved in trying to get the cars and others too, and eventually we ended up with the latest Rover, which is, there's nothing spectacular, but it's all right. And we managed to hire this Rover. George Harrison wasn't around. We got this Rover. George Harrison would sometimes, of course, give his car that Prabhupada's used. And there was a few others who would, but everything was blocked. We couldn't get a vehicle. So we got this Rover, which wasn't very big. I mean, it's bigger than a normal little car, but it was not particularly big. And it's not, it's just, whatever it is. So we got this car, and I had to drive it, for various reasons. So this is the only time I drove Prabhupada. I got in the car, the first thing I said, where's the gear stick? There was no gear stick. Oh, this is automatic. I said, what? I'd never heard of a car with automatic. it was a new thing, at least in England, an automatic car. It was a new car. It was the car of the year for its style, It's automatic. And I didn't know what to do. I was like going to the airport in this car. I put my foot down, and it was the brake instead. And boom, the car would come to. I was having paranoia that this was going to happen if I'm driving Prabhupada back to the manor, Oh, it was such an ordeal driving this car. And then I got to the airport, and I was sat in the car outside. We must have got some permission to sit outside the arrivals hall, because you can't normally do that. We were there, and they got special clearance from Prabhupada for sure. And then I was sat at the wheel, like a little bit, nervous and concerned that, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? It was such a struggle getting to the airport, And then with Prabhupada in the car, and then I had the shock of my life, because Tamal Krishna Maharaj was with Prabhupada, and I'd already had a few experiences with Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and I knew how, if Prabhupada may have said something or not, but Tamal Krishna was really, it was like a volcano if you didn't do it right, And I was like, oh my God. I was sat there, and Tamal Krishna came, and then Prabhupada came, I think Upendra and one other devotee, and then I saw Srila Prabhupada. He was just so thin. His body was so thin and gaunt. They were carrying him, placed him in the back seat. I could hardly look. They placed him in the back seat, and then servants sat next to him, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj sat right next to me in the front seat. And I'm there driving the car out of the airport. Like 500% attentive, to everything. Right foot, left foot, carefully driving like anything, And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj starts asking me questions. And it's like, oh God, I couldn't get it together, It was really difficult. By Krishna's grace alone, I was able to achieve it without any. There was one hitch. When I pressed the accelerator instead of the brake, and we went forward at this roundabout. But at that moment, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was talking to Prabhupada. But we never saw him. Fortunately, there was nothing coming, so we just kind of glided through. But other than that, Prabhupada actually asked Tamal Krishna Maharaj to ask me some questions. And one of them was to put the window down. The window was down, then Tamal said, put it up. And Prabhupada said, no, put it down. You can never really know the mind of a pure devotee, whether he was teaching us there or not. And then he asked some questions. Now, we were distributing books as much as anyone else in the world at that time. It was very close. France, West Coast, England, they were very close competition like that. So I thought, and we were making devotees. Janananda Swami was there in England, and we had an amazing Bhakta program. And Prabhupada was really inspired by this Bhakta program. I mean, he really was. I mean, so many devotees joining, even encouraged a newsletter, Sankirtan newsletters, all these things were going on. And Prabhupada was very pleased with all of that. So I was convinced, because I was Sankirtan leader, kind of was at least the coordinator. And I was thinking, if Prabhupada asks you anything, he's going to talk about Sankirtan, book distribution, because, that's what we're into, and that's what we're doing. So Prabhupada wants to ask a question. And so I'm expecting, how many devotees you've made, how many books you distributed. He didn't mention any of that. All he was asking about were, how are the cows? How are the cows? How many cows? How much milk? Who's looking after the cows? And so on. All kinds of questions. And I must say, it was one of the most embarrassing times of my life. I knew nothing practically. I didn't even know how many cows there were. I knew next to nothing. That was what was on Prabhupada's mind, the cows. Then we heard, again, of course, probably through Tamal Krishna Maharaj later on, that Srila Prabhupada had come to London, specifically because of the love of his disciples, his followers, his devotees. And they, after a little while, of course, hundreds of them came from Germany and maybe France and different countries, came to England to have that time with Prabhupada. Prabhupada wanted to see all of his devotees. He wanted to be with his devotees. As in 72, he wanted to be with his devotees. Same thing in 77. He wanted to be with his devotees. That was his life. But he also had a very important mission. And I believe, from what we heard and what we read also, that Srila Prabhupada wanted to go to America, stopping in London, but his intention was to go to the States, particularly Gita Nagari, because Gita Nagari was a farm which had been acquired. It was a very excellent farm. We still have that beautiful farm. And Prabhupada wanted to show us how to establish this Varna ashram aspect of ISKCON. That's what he was talking about in London, mostly. He also was very eager to hear the book scores. One of his secretaries or servants, somebody, was not very enthusiastic about the book scores being brought to Prabhupada because his health was so much, he didn't want to get excited, you know. But Prabhupada said, no, this is our life, and so he wanted to hear the scores every day. But he was particularly talking about Varna Ashram, how important this was for our movement, for ISKCON. It's not just a matter of individuality, but it's to actually create a society which the whole world can live in. The whole world cannot live in temples. It's a society which goes way beyond the realms of the temple president or the temple. It is a society which includes everything. That's what Prabhupada was looking at, as far as I can see. And the cows, his talking to me about the cows was center point. Center point. Without the protection of the cows, there is no human society. Everything is, dependent, basically speaking, on Krishna's pleasure. And how can we please Krishna if we don't serve the cows? So back to the manner in 77, Prabhupada would sometimes, because he'd always pass it on to his spiritual master, always the mercy of my Guru Maharaj. He was always like that. He would always remind us of that. It is not us, it's the mercy of one's Guru Maharaj. So then on his birthday, on his Vyasa Puja day, towards the end, at this point I was a little close, I got close, somehow, I don't know why or how, but I was pretty close to the Vyasa Sam. And then the devotees in the kitchen, because I wasn't cooking that year, but the devotees in the kitchen had prepared a beautiful cake for Srila Prabhupada. And they put candles, in the West it's tradition to put candles on the cakes. So they put many candles on the cake. So the cake came before Prabhupada. Prabhupada, obviously looked at the candle, looked at the cake, and you could hear it, got the message, he whispered in his servant's ear, how many candles are there on the cake? And they said 81. You could hear 81. And Srila Prabhupada said, no, 82. Now, in Western world, it would have been 81. But Prabhupada used to do this. He would go by the Asian system of dating. And it's quite logical. When you're born, that's your first birthday. It's not your 0 birthday, it's your first birthday. So this is your 82nd, not your 81st. Isn't it? Logic. He told us a different logic, to readjust our logic. We're so attached to our Western so-called logics, I suppose. Doesn't matter. Either way, but anyway, he taught us like that. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. I saw that Srila Prabhupada had this ability to exactly reciprocate with each and every person perfectly, to encourage them and to, help them in their lives to become Krishna conscious. That's what I felt, that, he had this ability to, just know the hearts of others and give exactly the reciprocation that was required. Like when I took initiation, actually as soon as I went in Prabhupada's room, I was nervous. But as soon as I got in there, Prabhupada, just his glance on me, the nervousness went away. I felt relaxed. He could see that I was a lost case almost. He didn't even, I know he gave a little instruction on it. He gave that a very sweet way to me at that time, to offer obeisances properly. That's why he gave me a sweet bowl as well. So, yeah, this ability to know what was required to, encourage that devotee. No matter that one, sometimes it'd be very heavy because that person either needed it, could take it, or whatever it was. So he knew what was just required. He's in touch with the Super Soul, in touch with the spiritual master. There was no false ego at all. Just pure transparency. And if you want to say one thing, which was a quality, you could see he had nothing to get from anyone. He had only the quality to give, to love. No matter what, he was always giving love. He was always giving. Although we may say, well, he asked this, he asked that, but that was only out of love, to try to help us to come to our senses, wake up, get out of this dukkhalaya mashashvatam, get out of Maya. One time I went with a group of devotees to the airport to see Srila Prabhupada away, perhaps in '76. And Prabhupada was sat there. The flight was delayed. We were sitting up. The flight was delayed by several hours. So we went up to the mezzanine floor. There was a place you could sit to wait for the, for the call for the airplane. It was a little bit more laid back in those days. So we were sat in the mezzanine floor. We were sat on the floor. Prabhupada was sitting on a chair. And I could see Prabhupada looking over what do you call it? Not the wall, but the sort of thing, whatever there. Looking down onto the area below where people were running around to catch their flights, checking in, this, that, the other. And Prabhupada was looking down, and I could see tears coming down his eyes, pouring. And I got the feeling that, that Srila Prabhupada was feeling that, paradukha dukha. He was feeling so much distress, so much, that feeling of pain for the suffering of others, how they were aimlessly going about their lives, running for God knows what. Prabhupada was always feeling like that, compassion. Whatever he did, it was in the mood of compassion, to help others to, save their lives. Because we're all so ignorant. And, everything he did was to help us also to save her. Je anilo premadana koruna prachu